Hi, this is Clarence Moy with Awards Daily here with Katy Fray, the makeup department head for Paramount Plus's new limited series, The Offer, which details the making, the tumultuous making, I should say, of Paramount's Oscar-winning classic, The Godfather. Katy, it's very nice to meet you.
You too. Thank you.
So obviously, I want to jump into the styles and the techniques that you used to recreate the looks from The Godfather, particularly in those filming scenes. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the research that you had to do to get into that 60s and 70s look for non-filming scenes, just for every day in that time period.
So there was an extensive amount of research. I mean, we wanted it to look real. We didn't want it to look like everybody's a polished person. We wanted them to look like they were in the movie and they were real and they're running around and make it as, as authentic as we could with and so we did a lot of research on all the cosmetic companies who were out at the time, the colors, the palettes, the things that were going on at the time. It was a lot of fun parties, and it was a new time where it was exploring more colors, especially in California, and obviously looking then into the New York fashions as well, and obviously some of the European influences like for Francois. So it was a lot of Vogues, a lot of magazines of the time, a lot of books, just so much. And the internet's a very useful source as well. So we were picking different iconic, women of the time and men, and using their looks and transforming them down. And then obviously the research of the individual people that were in the show, Ruddy, Robert Evans. So it was fun because you've got layers. It's not just the 60s, 70s, you've got layers upon layers. And then obviously the 40s as well with the original movie. So, taking place in the 40s. So yeah, it was fun.
You actually alluded to this a little bit, but as I was thinking about what kinds of questions I was going to ask you, I wondered, is there a look visually for makeup for someone who is based out of New York versus LA in that 60s and 70s period?
There was definitely more color and obviously suntans, a lot of suntans in California that they weren't getting in New York. There was a lot less clothing. So it was, a much more, I'd say, brighter area of colors. Whereas New York has got more of an edge to it. You've got a lot of the London stuff with New York type, more edgy fashion. So, but then the Italians were very, lots of the housewives and the women were, didn't have as much, they weren't as outgoing with their makeups. They were more conservative. They kept at home and housewife type of mentality for lots of them. So we looked into all of those like things that were happening around the time, and each character was individually, developed for everyone. So yeah, it was fun.
When you look at the 1940, you mentioned the 1940s looks that you needed for those Godfather sequences. And while we're not seeing extensive amounts of actual recreations, you do see the actors who are prepared to then walk in front of the camera and perform those scenes. How did you figure out those looks? I mean, obviously you've got the film as a palette, and you've got the research of the makeup designer for the original Godfather. What
Yeah.
else did you pull into to make
Um,
these looks?
we had to obviously differentiate between the actors' shapes of their faces and the originals plus the actors that we've got. So say for Al Pacino, um, Anthony playing Al Pacino, he was, he was very great. The casting was fantastic.
Mm.
But then he couldn't even grow stubble because he was such a baby face. So we had to put on stubble. And then by the end of filming, he was growing his own stubble. So he grew up during the filming time for us, which was fun. So, we'd add the different shadings and stuff and looking at exact, how we can just do the eyebrows a little bit more, and it shapes the face just that bit to get more of the same features as we could. So there was a lot of very detailed, subtle changes just to, just trying to do hairlines and eyes, and just subtle shading can really do amazing things. So yeah, that was, mostly. And obviously, I mean, Dick Smith was, I mean, looking at his work, I mean, I've studied him for years, and it's amazing, like just looking at everything that he did for the movie, from the bruises to the recreating like whatever he did within those scenes. We were watching scene by scene for everything we recreated to, and within the behind the scenes, you've got the ADs and stuff that are all in the 70s look. And then you've got within the movie, you've got the Brandos and, everybody that we're recreating, which are all iconic characters, which is, a scary feat to do, but it was good fun. So.
Absolutely. I want to talk about recreating some of those iconic characters in just a second, but something that appeared to me, and this may be a dumb question, so please forgive me because I don't know a lot about makeup, but when you're looking at period makeup stylings, does modern makeup give you that ability to recreate those looks, or did you have access to period makeup, that came from the 70s, 60s, 40s, whatever?
A bit of both. I mean,
Okay.
we didn't, luckily, yes. Now, as long as we don't go for the really like glossy, some of the new things have got so much shimmer and glitters, and which are really newer. So we were looking a lot of the cosmetic companies at the time, like the Revlon, Avon, what else we have? There was like a Max Factor, there was a lot of companies and new companies coming up at the 60s and 70s. So we were researching all of everything from the nail varnishes to whatever. So we did use modern makeup. I mean, obviously, because lots of it does go off after a time, it's difficult to get, makeup that's not, but we kept all the very matte, and just use the colors. I mean, there's so much available now. There's so many companies, and it's just making sure nothing goes off. And we kept it within a very, clean area of the peaches, your creams. So yeah.
So I want to dive into some of these extreme looks, and I mean extreme in terms of extremely great. No, the transformations that these actors had to undergo, and more specifically, Justin Chambers had to become Marlon Brando. And as an actor, I mean, there's a rough sort of face shape that's somewhat similar, but he doesn't look extreme. You would never look at him outside of this series and think, oh, that he looks like Marlon Brando. How did you make that work so well? Because I think by the end of it, I was like, yeah, I see some resemblance. I feel that is, a reasonable facsimile of Marlon Brando.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I've got a fly in this room.
No worries.
So it was helpful. It was, I mean, so scary to start with when I was reading the script, and we don't get all the scripts at the beginning, so you're just reading it thinking, oh, maybe this might have to happen, and then you read further, yes, I've got to make the Don. And, and obviously, first of all, you go back to Dick Smith straight away, looking at every bit of research, and everything he did. So we used a lot of from the beginning, doing the Brando before we put him further into the full Don makeup. We did all the shading, and Justin was so into doing everything we could from, he just wanted to feel like he was that character, and, he was scared as we were. So it was fun. So the main thing that I wanted to do was to recreate the dental plumpers that Dick Smith did to give the extended jaw, which we worked with a dentist who helped get us the creation, the dental, because he wears Invisaligns himself. So we got his impressions, and then we made ourselves a vacuum form version that we made it in the trailer, which was fun. As me and my team, James helped me amazingly with doing that. We were like, okay, this is working. We've got to sculpt that bit a bit more. That's going to do it. And, a lot of experiments, but it came out amazingly. And Justin was so happy. And once he put those Invisaligns in with the little plumpers in there, it transformed the finished final look amazingly. And we used a little bit of the same techniques, the stitch and stretch and stipple, which Dick Smith did. But then I made some little silicone transfer appliances just to do the aging and enhance the right shapes of his face. And then obviously extending the brows and just all those subtle little bits everywhere to get the final look, which I think really worked. It was fun to see him on that set. It was just like, wow, that's really, yeah.
It absolutely does, and it's such a risk to take on such an iconic actor, iconic character, such as Marlon Brando and the Don in The Godfather. But I think you guys pulled it off swimmingly.
Oh, it was scary, and like I was like, oh God, if someone's gonna say, I wanted it to be subtle enough and not go too heavy, because if you go too heavy, it just can be too much. So
Right.
we went as subtle as we could, and Justin was just so into everything, which was great.
Subtlety, I think, works better than an extreme amount, because
Yeah,
obviously you don't have an actor working today that looks anything like Marlon Brando. So, going subtle, trying to provide the hint of it without
yeah,
trying to fully recreate is,
yeah.
I find, so much
Yeah,
preferable.
and just like the little grays in the eyebrows, and just
Mhm.
just the subtle essences of the same. We pick this bit out and this bit out and bring it together. So it was, yeah.
So you also have Giovanni Ribisi as Joe Colombo. So talk to me about what it took to take him into a balding Italian mafia.
Well, it was so much fun. I mean, to start with, I gotta say, it was like Giovanni is amazing, amazing, amazing. And he comes in and he's like, I want to look like this. And you're like, I know, but he's like, I really want to do it. And he's already got his voice, and he's just in character. And he's like,
That's a great impersonation.
and he's like, yeah, let's do it, let's do it. And so it was more convincing the rest of the producers and the directors that we could pull it off, because once the hair's gone, it's gone. So
Right.
we were like, yeah, we can do it. We're gonna do it. And we basically, Giovanni walked around with a very silly hairdo for the whole shooting time, the 6 months. He had this little tiny tuft at the front of his hair that we kept, and the rest we shaved the whole bit back. So he was basically look ridiculous without the hairpiece on. Then we put a
Mhm.
little tiny hairpiece just to give him the comb over.
Mhm.
So, and he put on 30 pounds. So with that and the comb over, we gave him this good receding hairline. We kept his skin really real, gave him a little bit of a tanning when he needed it, because the real Joe Colombo always looked after himself. He wasn't tanned, but he was healthy looking, but he was overweight, and he was real. We got his nails buffed every week, which we did for Giovanni. And yeah, it was such a fun transformation. It really was. And yeah, we started off a tiny bit, a little bit more, until Giovanni's like, no, more. So when I did that with him every day, so it was good. It was a fun transformation.
So outside of the more eye-catching transformations, talk to me about some of the more subtle makeup approaches. Things like, on Juno Temple, who plays Betty.
Juno Temple, we wanted her to look like she was real,
Mhm.
beautiful, real assistant of the time. So we kept it very much in the period. We kept her with the corals and the peaches, and we gave her a nice socket and a little flick. But we made sure her makeup looked like it was sitting on her and it wasn't just applied. So she was running around and she was doing the assistant job. And then when we got to the Oscars for her, we then transformed her. When she went to the wrap party, we pushed her a little bit further. Once we went into the 70s, we put more of a waterline on her. And we used like the Cher iconic glitter look for her eyes for the Oscars, which was fun to show that she's transformed into this amazing woman. Yeah, and then the people like Robert Evans, he was Matthew Good, he was the fake tan man, so we kept him tanned all the way through, which was a nightmare sometimes, but it was, once we got it down, it was great. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, Katie, I think those are all the questions I had for you today. Fantastic work on the show. Loved all of the looks. Loved the recreation, as I've mentioned before, of Justin Chambers as Marlon Brando. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was great fun and lovely talking with you.
Great talking to you. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.